Since many of the same colors in the foreground are also within the silver bowl, I think the progression would be to, rather than clear my palette, to continue along this line. A couple of things that I should do at some point, and now's as good a time as any, is tone down the lip of the silver bowl. I've been carefully preserving this edge. Squint my eyes, look at the overall value pattern. Okay, it's going to be pretty light here, but slightly darker than here. There's a little transition across here as it moves towards dark. It's going to get quite dark across here. And within those parameters, I can start laying down some patches of color and then play with them and move them into place. And much of it is just pure abstraction, really, where the silver bowl is taking on this semi-random pattern stemming from the patina that's on the bowl. Okay, that's going to get quite a bit darker, but strokes of that brown that I see where the patina marks are occurring, nothing too wrong there. I think I can let that sit. A little more color around the highlight and the reflected color onto the silver. Looking at the edge here, can I go darker underneath? Anything I can do reasonably within this area to create some darks around the highlight at the top is going to make the highlight brighter and more effective. This quick kind of skipping stroke, which suggests some of the texture that arises in the patina. Also looking at values. As more and more things within the painting come into focus, what I need to paint next becomes more and more obvious. For instance, the blank holes of the grapes. I'm going to use pretty much the same mixes, same technique as before. The only difference that I might possibly see would be that the color temperature of this small grape is a little bit higher in higher key and perhaps a bit more orange because I think it's picking up a bit of the yellow reflected off the cloth. Again, keeping in mind that I will probably adjust highlights later. I'll just start this with a small brush. This is so easy at this point, having gone across this complex mass with some of them in focus, some of them not, disappearing back into shadows. To have the luxury of sitting here and painting one grape is quite nice, quite easy. And I'll just continue like this for the rest of the grapes. Again, the process is the same. All right, I've just had a look at the grapes and they appear to be fine. The things that are not complete, again, stand out like a sore thumb. And for me, the floating grapes in the foreground are a bit annoying, so it's time to anchor them. It's critical that the shadows are accurately drawn. If you have a shadow that doesn't connect with the base of the grape, if it doesn't connect exactly, and if it's not drawn so that the shadow feels like it's coming out, it's not going to work. And so I think that it's a safe thing for me to even begin to indicate in pencil a little bit of the shadow line. What I like to do as a safety measure is to draw right through objects. And so when I'm looking at this grape, for instance, and I eye the angle of the shadow, to make it come out on the other side, I'll draw right through the grape that I've already painted. Painting shadows on cloth is a bit different than on a hard surface because you often don't see the shadow immediately underneath. The cloth might soften it a bit. And if that's the case, then I'll just go with what I'm observing for the most part. There's a little gap in here where light is shining underneath and begin to suggest the shadow anchoring the silver bowl as well, which can be very simple. Just a little line like that, a little edge. It's partly shadow. And partly shadow from the grapes, that is, and partly the shadow anchoring the bowl. Bring it right up to the black grape as well. Maybe just a stroke or two indicating how it goes over that little fold, and maybe another stroke indicating the fold continuing into the shadow, which is kind of a tricky little bit that I don't want to exaggerate, but I think it's kind of nice to place it in there because it helps break up the movement that the shadow creates out of the painting. This helps bring you back into it. So some back and forth on that. And I don't think I need to continue that light band, which is occurring through here, into the shadow, rather paint a dark on the other side of it to indicate that little rise. Seems to be working. Onto these. Carry this back on out, up and over to a degree, very subtle. Looking and checking them to see if there's anything I need to adjust at this point. Just a little bit more underneath here. That would seem to do. Although I have yet to finish the foreground reflections in the silver bowl, at just a few of the highlights, some of the last things, I think that I should probably put another wash over the background. One of the ways to work with a centered composition, again to offset the shapes, is to make something unequal. I don't think I need to worry about all the detail, everything going on in the background, and yet I want some gradation across here that is unequal. So what I think I'm going to do is a simple light to dark wash across the background, and I would like to minimize attention paid to this area because it's a strong focal point anyway. Granted, there are other equally strong values throughout the painting, but the meeting of all of these dark values in a contained area creates a spot that I might like to be able to move away from. So I'm going to start with a mix which is compatible with, not identical to the cloth, simply because, again, I'd like to minimize contrast in this area. There might be some areas where the wash dries unequally in here, and I think that'll be okay, again, relating to the texture in the silver bowl. If it's not okay, then what I'll do is another application of paint later to solve that problem. But I think this works reasonably well. I do like the transition here. I think that was effective. Let's try it. As the painting nears completion, there's really only one area that merits careful attention still, and it's probably the reflections in the silver. There are a few other things. There are a few gaps I see, little edges that need to be refined. I still haven't refined the highlights, but by and large the painting could very nearly be considered complete except for the addition of the reflections. I think I'll probably have to go back into the shadows that I had started to paint as well. And what I'm doing here with this light value, light red, it's going to have to get much darker, is just kind of redefine the edges that I had originally indicated with a pencil, just to make sure that I have the drawing right. And now the last things, which I think are terribly important, although subtle, get back into the modeling within the silver bowl. I have what looks to be a patina mark coming across there. I'll continue that. Continue it on the other side by carefully kind of brushing in the continuation of that. And I think with one more stroke that I see I need to soften, that pretty much concludes this still life of the grapes in the silver bowl. I hope you've enjoyed it. All right, that brings us to the end, and I hope you've enjoyed the demonstrations that I've done. I hope they help you in your own work, and I hope that you can apply them to the wealth of subjects in watercolor. Now get out and paint.
Now available to buy. Try these techniques at home whenever you wish. The extended DVD of today's workshop is now available from the Painting and Drawing channel. For further information and to order your copy, go to www.paintingdrawingchannel.com.